This is Alec Cope of WeAreChange, and I'm here with the one and only Michael Tellinger. Thank you for being here with me, Michael.
Hey, Alec, good to see you.
I appreciate it. Michael, you're a researcher, an author, an explorer. You present a lot of ideas and a lot of information for a very, very different view of life, and it is extremely interesting. And I also understand that you are one of the founders, or main founder, of the Ubuntu political movement in South Africa that's now spread to some over 100 countries.
Yeah, it's actually more than 200 countries.
Oh, yeah. You talk about a moneyless world. What is the difference between this world based on money and a money-free world?
Well, everything. Everything we have come to be familiar with in the society and the whole planet as we know it. How everything works and how we interact as human beings, what we do from day to day, the structure of our lives, the structure of our cities, the kind of energy we use, petroleum and electricity energy, the technology we use, all of that is totally and utterly controlled by money, by the supply of money. And very few people are aware of what money is, the origins of money, and how money is being used and abused as a tool of enslavement over the human population, not just for the last few hundred years, but for thousands of years. And once people realize what's going on and see the truth, or find out what the truth is, it changes their perspective quite quickly. And that's really what this is all about, what my presentations and my lectures are all about, to bring people into the fold and make them realize that we've all been conned, we've all been lied to by all our governments, or every single respective government is pretty much lying to its people, and in cahoots with the central bankers. And we can talk about the bankers in more detail based on the questions that you have.
Yeah, also, Michael's book right here, I read some of it. It's a very amazing book. It is wonderful. When it comes to the bankers and whatnot, are there any specific court cases that you know about? I know you've engaged the courts to a degree. Are there any specific court cases you can cite about where the people actually win against the banks?
Yeah, this has been amazing. In the United States, there have been some wins in the courts, specifically on this issue of MERS. And MERS, M-E-R-S, I think it is. It's a very similar process where the banks pretty much lose control of the contracts when they lend money to people. In South Africa and in the rest of the world also, it's known as securitization. Now what happens is when you sign a contract to buy a home or a car or an overdraft or a credit card, any of those documents that you sign with your signature on it and an amount of money on it is immediately converted and recognized by the bank as a negotiable instrument. And it becomes a valuable negotiable instrument. That is a true form of money, where you put your signature on it. You as a living, breathing human being actually creates the value in that piece of paper. And this is what banks work with. So what happens in a nutshell, what most people aren't aware of, is banks create money out of thin air, using our signatures to get us into debt, and then making us pay back something that they never had. They created synthetically and enslaved the entire global population for the rest of their lives. And this debt is getting bigger and bigger. And in fact, the youth of today are pretty much screwed.
Yeah.
The youth of today have no future. And the sooner the youth wakes up and realizes what has happened, how their parents have been lied to and conned, and the ignorance of the parents of the youth of today has been exploited by the banking elite to get the children and the youth of today into perpetual slavery for the rest of their lives. And there is something that the youth can do about it. First thing is become aware of it. Familiarize yourself and become aware of what's going on. Because information is power. Knowledge is power. Once you know what's going on, then you also know what to do about it.
Yeah.
And where the lies and the crimes have been committed. Because these are crimes against humanity. Crimes against the people, the ignorant people, the good-hearted, hard-working people of the world, of the United States, of Canada, where we are now, South Africa, all the countries of the world. The people are exploited through their good nature, their open-heartedness. They just cannot believe that the government and the banks could lie to them so much that the proportions of the lies are so vast that most people can't imagine it.
I know, it's insane. It is like inmates running the insane asylum, literally. It's hard for me to even conceive. I noticed during one of your talks you spoke about how The Ubuntu system, I am, I am that we all are.
I am what I am because of what we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really the meaning of Ubuntu, the philosophical ancient African meaning. And all ancient cultures around the world and native people around the world have very similar philosophies. They might be calling it different names, but it essentially means the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up around Native Americans, so a lot of the themes I saw with the Ubuntu philosophy, it mirrors that. I noticed you spoke about how if a town were to adopt a Ubuntu-like system, see, when people bring up systems, like, automatically they get paranoid about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Ubuntu system is a self-regulating system that brings nothing but abundance and cooperation and genuine growth for everybody.
Yeah.
Could you give me an example of what, like, a small town could implement, like, one small step? I know each town is different, but one small step that, like, a community project.
Yeah.
Working 3 hours in like a garden, like what you were speaking about. Could you give us an example of that?
Sure. It's all of it is obviously in the book in a lot detail, but very basically is people, all humans everywhere have very similar needs. We need water, food, shelter, love, friendship, community, arts and culture, technology, housing, health, education. These are all the basic cornerstones of what every community and every society needs. So it's not as if different communities will need different things. We pretty much all need the same things. It's then after you know that you've got all the foundations in place, what happens next is what the people and their passions then go and create to make their lives beautiful in the communities that they live in. And the moment you remove money from the system, you free that community from all the restraints and all the obstacles and all the hurdles that normally prevent people from achieving their goals. Because essentially and ultimately it's always the money that gets in the way and gets between people and what they want to do in their lives and what passions they want to pursue. People want to do all kinds of things, but most of the time they don't have the money to do it. So money always gets in the way. And it gets in the way of people providing abundance for their community. You know, if you're a wonderful baker and you want to start a bakery in your town and you go to the bank and say, I need money to open a bakery for my town, the bankers will look at you and say, you know, Michael, yeah, we've heard you're a fantastic baker, but based on our financial models, our loan to you is not financially viable.
Exactly.
So we're not going to lend you the money to start a bakery to feed the people. So what has happened is that bankers have become the naysayers or the people that control our lives. They prevent us from doing what people want to do. And, you know, it takes a little while to process this, but once you realize that this whole thing is a con and a lie and a process to oppress and enslave people, it becomes very obvious what we need to do. The moment you remove money, all of this becomes possible. But now then the question is, well, how do you operate a community without money?
Yeah.
And you brought it up. The community projects is a foundational starting point for small towns and small communities to start absorbing the Ubuntu or contributionist philosophy. And it's all about contributionism, about working together in cooperation as opposed to competition. And the community projects are obvious, you know, from milk, butter, cheese, bread, growing food, all kinds of foods, breeding fish, creating a metalworks factory, a woodwork factory, developing new alternative and eco-friendly building materials, so we stop using disgusting materials to build our homes with, you know, and start using materials that actually are lasting, that last for thousands of years, and are far more thermally effective, and are actually resonate with nature as opposed to being in dissonance with nature. And so it goes. So all these community projects are critical, and but the foundation of this seems to be, how do you get people to cooperate and work in these community projects?
Exactly.
Now, in Africa, in South Africa, there are obviously different socioeconomic conditions where people are homeless, they don't have work, they're hungry. So some of the basic needs in like the town that I live in would be to start a community kitchen and be able to feed the homeless people on a daily basis with at least one good meal a day. But in return for that good meal a day, they must go and work for 3 hours in one of the community projects. So now you've created a cyclical formula that feeds itself. And where do you get the money to get the food to feed the people on a daily basis? You get it from recycling the rubbish dump. And so the money you make every day from recycling the rubbish dump, you can then buy the food with to run the food kitchen and feed the orphans and the single mothers and the aged and those people that just don't have work and can't afford food. So that's how we're planning, and I believe many other towns can use that as an example. And I believe that, you know, in America there are a lot of homeless people, a lot of hungry people.
Yes.
It's not as rosy as people think.
Oh yes.
I've traveled widely throughout America and I've seen the poverty.
Yeah, in the city I live in, there's homeless people all over the place. It's not even a very large city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a point of departure, and then there's another beautiful point of departure, and that is the electricity thing. Because ultimately, you know, without electricity and energy, it's very difficult to do anything in our lives and our socioeconomic structure. So once the town or the community has found an alternative source of electricity and has figured out a way of providing it to the people, you can change everything. Because once the people know that there's access, they've got potential access to free electricity.
What's stopping them?
Very little is going to stop the people from getting access to that. You know, and especially in Africa, if the municipality gets in between the people and the free electricity, they'll go and burn down the municipal buildings. I mean, you're not going to. No army or police force is going to stop the people from getting their hands on that free electricity once they know it's there. So you've got to start uniting the people and sharing this information with them and getting the people on your side. You get them on your side and get them to trust you and get their confidence and make them understand that you really are, you do really care about them. You're not just some other corporation that's trying to exploit the people, by providing them with this community kitchen and showing them how working together is instantly beneficial for everybody. And then once you've presented the free electricity to the people, say, right, now everyone's got a choice. Either you join us and you have free electricity, or you can carry on paying for the electricity as you are now. And in return for the free electricity, all you have to do is work for 3 hours a week in one of the many community projects that we're setting up in our community. And it's not going to take long before all the people put their hand up and say, well, I'll work for 3 hours a week for free electricity, and uncapped free electricity, not just, you know.
Yeah.
So, and the electricity devices exist. There are ways of providing electricity for a town, by the people, for the people. And people need to figure out what those alternatives are and start working towards getting into a situation when they can actually get to a situation where they can just plug the town in with their own electricity supply.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's 2 points I want to make. That threshold to surpass this system is possible, and also this is not communism, okay? Because I've seen people compare it to that. Could you go into that?
Yeah, well, of course it's not communism. Communism is just another brutal regime, just like there's very little difference between communism and capitalism.
I agree.
You know, the one is a fast track to absolute control, which is communism, and the other one is a convoluted, roundabout way to get total control, and is disguised as democracy and corporate diversity and competition is good for people. And you know, as you know by now, competition is not good. Exactly. Competition leads to destroying families. It causes violence, conflict. It causes corporate domination and control. It causes destruction of innovative technology in favor of promoting other technologies that benefit a certain corporation. Competition is the worst thing that could have ever happened to humanity. But we've been so indoctrinated by it. Competition is good. If you work hard, you get to the top. And then, well, when I get to the top, what about all the other people that want to get to the top too?
Yeah.
You know, how do I share the stuff when I'm at the top with everybody else?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's a beautiful lie that's been spun and woven so immaculately to the human race that we've all sucked it up and swallowed it.
For a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah.
So cooperation is what we need to be working on. Constructive cooperation that creates abundance, that creates the best technology for everyone, and not the best technology for a corporation at the expense of everyone else.
Exactly.
And the best farming principles, the best alternative healing principles. And we know, you know, like everybody else that's done any research, that the cure for all disease has been discovered.
Yes.
But that is not going to serve the pharmaceutical companies.
course.
And there you can see where competition is not good. It causes unimaginable suffering and harm and death to millions of people every year because they're withholding true healing methods and true healing cures from cancer to every other imaginable disease, because the cure for all disease has been found many times over and withheld, and people have been killed for it by the pharmaceutical giants. It's a horrible situation.
Yeah, it's like a mafia cartel trying to keep itself alive.
Totally. In fact, I'm glad you brought up the word mafia, because the global financial system is the largest organized crime syndicate in the world.
Yes.
That's it. It's as simple as that. If people haven't figured this out, it's time to wake up. Realize what these people are. They are criminals of the highest order. They're the ones that have set up, through their control of money and the global banking and the central banks that are all private banks, have set up the legal systems. They've written legal policy in there to protect themselves. Like in South Africa, for example, there's a secrecy clause. You cannot take the South African Reserve Bank to court, even to the Constitutional Court. They are protected by a secrecy clause that prevents them or allows them a get out, and they say we don't have to disclose that because we have a secrecy clause in the act that governs the South African Reserve Bank. It's unbelievable.
Well, the openness for control is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
It is insane. I've also noticed through my own research, because I noticed that a lot of the alternative media is mostly doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And it's become stagnant to a degree. And
Totally.
I agree with what you said yesterday when you spoke. You said that, I'm tired of hearing nothing but problems. Now I want to talk about the solutions.
Yeah. And I think many people feel that way. In fact, majority of the world feels that way.
I feel that way. I felt that way for a while now.
Yeah. And the constant harping on the problems and the problems, it puts people into a sense of deep depression.
Yes, it does.
And we need to stop that now. We need to feed people with real options and real solutions. Solutions that when they see it and they hear it, they know that it's real. It's not just some other political agenda to try and get them on. When people know this, and I think you've sensed it, and everybody that goes to my workshops and presentations can sense it immediately, this is a real solution.
Yes,
a workable and a plausible solution to the misery of humanity.
Yes. And I don't want to brown nose you or anything, but honestly, yes, this is really the most effective system I've come across. Honestly.
I don't want to brown nose myself, but
yeah.
but I know, because I've started this in 2005 is when I started exploring this philosophy. So I only realized the other day I've been doing it for 10 years now. And it's taken me a long time to go through this step by step and figure out where the problems are, and try and resolve every problem. How will this work in a moneyless society? How will industry work? How will healthcare work? How will transport work? What will happen to the electricity, energy, healing, education? How is everything going to work that we have come to become accustomed with in our socioeconomic structure? How will that work in a world without money? And as you work through this, it becomes more and more beautiful and more inspiring and exciting, where eventually you can't shut the hell up. You want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing now for at least the last 5 years.
Yes. And I've noticed, just based on your talks, you are very well researched with all that. And it is a wonderful thing. Yeah, this whole thing that's happening to humanity, personally for me, it's like this giant invasion, a silent invasion. It can be beat, and we can all do it together.
Yeah. Well, humanity is under onslaught. We are under attack. In fact, sometimes I think that the Third World War has begun, and except it's a silent war against the people, against all of humanity, and people don't even know they're engaged in a war. When you start looking at what's happening with our water is poisoned, with fluoride and with all kinds of crap in our water that poisons our bodies. Our soil is poisoned by toxic fertilizers. Our crops are destroyed through genetically modified organisms that cause all kinds of disease in humanity. Our food supply is controlled by giants like Monsanto and DuPont and various others. Our skies are poisoned and our air is poisoned by chemtrail spraying. I mean, it is full-blown onslaught on humanity. And we can stop it. And there are certain basic things that people can start doing in their small communities to start taking back the control. And if 100,000 towns around the USA do it, it's going to be very difficult to stop. if Canada's population is a lot smaller, if 2,000 towns around Canada do that, it's going to be very difficult to stop. And that's what it is. Remember, it's the 99.9% against the 0.01% of the
fraction of 1%.
The slave masters that are doing this to humanity. So it's up to people to be informed and realize that there is something they can do. United we stand. Only out of unity can you get infinite diversity and forward motion into abundance.
Yeah. And once people see that alternative view of reality in a new system, it'll just go viral.
Totally.
You can't stop it.
Yeah. And like I said in my presentation yesterday, once you have one little town that's an Ubuntu or a contributionist system, and all the people, let's say you've got a town of 1,000 people. This is for the benefit of the viewers here, because you already know it.
Yes.
So once you've got a town of 1,000 people, and you provided alternative electricity that the people are in control of, and everybody agrees that in return for that free electricity, they're going to contribute 3 hours a week towards one of the community projects. That's 1,000 people times 3. It's 3,000 hours a week. I mean, that's an insane amount of work.
Yes.
You'll grow so much food. You'll create so much beautiful art. Your streets will be so awesomely clean. Your sports parks and sports facilities will be so incredibly well looked after. Your technology will be developed by the scientists in the community. Your water will be purer than anybody else's water. The abundance you will create for 3,000 hours a week of people just working one of the community projects. You'll have the best cheese, the best bread, the best, think of it. And from there on, the surplus, because the contributionism model is based on a 3 times principle. You create 3 times as much as what you need in your own community. So after you've consumed the 1/3 in your own community, and everybody that participates obviously gets the things they create virtually for free. It might not be free, but instead of $10 for something, you'll pay $1 for it. So it'll become incredibly cheap to live in these communities to start off with. Eventually, money will disappear completely, but it is a transitional phase. Once you've used up the 1/3 of the items, you make the 2/3 surplus available to the communities around you at a fraction of the cost that they pay for it in their own towns. And the moment you've done that, it is the end of capitalism. You will immediately destroy the capitalistic model, because all the people from the neighboring towns will come to you to buy their bread and their milk and their whatever it is that you're creating. And it'll virtually destroy their capitalist model overnight. And they'll not only have to, but they'll want to adopt your model.
Yeah.
So you're not forcing them to do anything. You're just saying, well, we live happily here and we're doing all this amazing stuff. We've got everything we need. And you can either join us or you can carry on being slaves to the old system.
Yes. And it's just more evidence. There's a lot of evidence. It's really not arguable at this point that this planet can be a paradise for everybody.
And it should be.
Yes.
It should be. You know what I find interesting is when I start talking, and mostly older people, when you start talking about this, they say, oh, this sounds like a utopian idea. So I say, well, you talk about utopian as if it's something that we shouldn't have. And your mind is so poisoned that you actually have told yourself that humanity is not allowed to live in a utopian society. That's how poisoned our minds have become.
Exactly.
We have to struggle, humanity has to struggle. Sorry, I don't buy that. That has been enforced on us, and we're getting out, and we are going to live in a utopian society. If I have anything to do with it, we could live in a utopian society next week.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. Also, it's very interesting with your whole engagement in the Ubuntu party in South Africa. Could you touch on that and how that went and how you feel it could have influenced the political system down there? I understand you had a commercial, but only aired like a dozen times, you said?
Yeah, well, the commercial, so the Ubuntu party participated in the South African elections on the 7th of May, 2014, and we went into the elections with about 1 million followers. So we were completely convinced that we were going to get at least 4 seats in Parliament. And to our shock and horror, during the elections, I realized how crooked and corrupt the political system is.
It's pretty morose.
And how they completely crook the counts and the votes. It is a completely corrupt system. And that goes for every country.
Yes.
And we ended up with just over 8,000 votes out of 1 million followers. So it was just completely corrupt, you know. And but what it did is it made a lot of people very excited about a true prospect, because suddenly they had a political party of consciousness that was not about politics, but it was about uniting humanity and getting rid of the tools of control that was saying it. We were saying it in our TV commercials and in our radio
it was
commercials.
So blunt. I loved it. I love watching that.
Yeah, telling people the South African Reserve Bank is controlled, is a private company controlled from Switzerland. And that's it. And you know, that's a shock to a lot of people. It's like, what? How can you say that? The South African Reserve Bank belongs to the government. No, it doesn't. And there starts the education and the questions and people going away and having a big aha moment.
It's a domino effect.
Yeah. But what it did, even though the fact that we were crooked and kept out of the South African Parliament, and I believe there was a directive instruction from the South African Reserve Bank to the IEC that runs the elections, the Independent Electoral Commission. They were given an instruction by the Reserve Bank saying the Ubuntu party is not getting anywhere near Parliament. Make sure that happens. So, because they run the country.
Exactly.
The Reserve Bank runs the country. So the fact that we were in the elections did many things for us that we could not have imagined. It gave us a huge credibility platform where people realized that these guys are serious. They're not just a bunch of bunny huggers or tree huggers or dope-smoking hippies, as they often like to paint alternative thinkers. You know, they always try and throw that kind of thing at you because it's the only defense they have.
Derogatory terms,
yeah,
all that.
Always, it's try and paint you into, oh, these are weird, strange, crazy people, don't listen to them. Well, that now has changed because people suddenly realize that we not only have been telling the truth, we now walk the talk, we're not just blowing hot air. And that does a lot. And I believe this is what needs to happen in every country. So it's not just a bunch of wild lefties that are shouting against the government. You're actually doing something about it on a political platform. And so it gave us credibility not just in South Africa but internationally. And it has set us up to unite people in the small towns in the municipal elections that are coming up in 2 years' time. Already we have more than 2,000 volunteers. In fact, it's probably doubled by now since I've been away from home. Well, when I left, it was more than 2,000 volunteers that put up their hand saying, I want to represent the Ubuntu Party in my town. And can we have T-shirts? We're going to go out and tell everybody about Ubuntu. So it's already taken on its own energy, and it's unstoppable now. And I think 2 years from now, once you've made a mark on the municipal front, and I do believe we will win some municipal elections, so we will have some Ubuntu towns from a political standpoint and controlling the municipality. That's going to be an interesting thing. Now that can happen in every country.
Of course. And I love how the Ubuntu system just smashes the left and right paradigm.
Yeah.
Like that's a real basic thing, especially when it comes to systems that actually work, but it's just so wonderful to me.
Yeah.
But that's all the questions I have for you, Mr. Michael Tellinger. You could reach him at www.michaeltellinger.com and the Ubuntu Party at www.ubuntuparty.org.za. Right.
That's it. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Tellinger.
Thank you.
This is Alec of WeAreChange. I'm signing off.
Mr. Kissinger, what are you going to be doing at Bilderberg this year in Switzerland?
What am I going to do in
Bilderberg, yeah, in Switzerland this year.
do at Bilderberg?
What happens there?
What was your business meeting at the Bilderberg meeting, and how come there's no press there? Can you please answer that question, sir? I'm such a big fan of yours. Just one question, very important.